But he wants to do the vaccine stuff. So much for I've heard that.
I now call this meeting of the Kansas State University Student Governing Association Student Senate to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I want to begin our Student Senate meeting taking place on Thursday, October 20th, 2022 with a land acknowledgement. We recognize that Kansas State University, as the first land-grant institution, stands on the ancestral lands of the Kaw people. Our state of Kansas is home to 4 federally recognized Native nations: the Iowa, Kickapoo, Prairie Band Potawatomi, and Sac and Fox. We must remember that the land serving as the foundation of this institution was, and still is, stolen land acquired by white settlers. We pledge our commitment to creating decolonized spaces at the university while advocating for the support and future success of Indigenous faculty, staff, and students at K-State. And with that, Speaker Pro Tem Pineda Gomez will take it away with our first roll call.
Thanks, Evan, and good evening, everyone. Anderson.
Here.
Bannister.
Here.
Bellamy.
Here.
Blood.
Here.
Broughton.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
Compton.
Here.
Coy.
Here.
Davidson. DePaz.
Here.
Dole.
Here.
Gromas. Heatherman.
Here.
Hoffman.
Here.
Hubnig.
Here.
Kamen.
Here.
Kirshen. Kidd.
Here.
Kermer.
Here.
Kenzie.
Present.
Labidi.
Here.
Long.
Here.
McFarland. Middaugh.
Here.
Morello.
Here.
Murphy.
Here.
Noretti. Navarro.
Here.
Oury.
Here.
Pelton.
Here.
Phillips.
Here.
Pilchard.
Here.
Pondillo.
Here.
Rogers.
Here.
Sayat Carly.
Here.
Salmon.
Here.
Schweier. Spindler. Spindler.
Here.
Stout.
Here.
Strout.
Here.
Tauber.
Here.
Thomas.
Here.
And Wolf. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. With that, we'll go ahead and move into our first open period. Are there any first open period speakers this evening? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move into approval of the minutes. The minutes were distributed on Tuesday along with the agenda and legislation tracking information. Are there any questions or corrections for the minutes? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes? Chair Thomas.
I move to approve the minutes.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes. Are there any objections? Seeing none, the minutes will stand approved. And with that, we will go ahead and give the announcements for the evening. So first up, Wildcat Dialogues is an intercultural leadership experience designed to introduce first-time students to tools they can use to engage in meaningful dialogues across differences to help create communities of belonging at K-State. Wildcat Dialogues is seeking volunteers to serve as small group facilitators on November 1st through the 4th. You can use that link there to sign up by October 26th if you're interested in helping first-year students connect with each other. And the application for federal student loan relief is now open. You can click that link there to find out if you're eligible for loan relief and get a little bit more information about what all that entails. That is going to be open until December 31st of 2023, so you do have some time, but I would encourage you to do it faster. And then regular announcements for the week, we have our proxy form there, so if you need to be absent from Student Senate for any reason, go ahead and fill out the proxy form. And then the Student Senate Zoom request form, if you are going to be out of town or away from K-State for a Thursday evening, but you can still attend Student Senate at 7 o'clock, you can go ahead and fill out the Zoom request form. And then if you want to give props to anyone in Senate, you can fill out a Senate shout out there. And the SGA member of the week this week is Logan Cohn. Logan put in countless hours over the past few weeks planning our attendance at the Big 12 conference in Lawrence last weekend. So give a big round of applause for all the hard work that Logan put in. And there is our upcoming events calendar, no changes from last week. And the quote of the week this week is, "Education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today." And that is by Malcolm X. And before we move into committee reports for this evening, we're going to have Chancellor Elliott come up and swear in some of our interns. So if you're a Phase 2 intern who is approved but not sworn in, you can come up to the front of the room now. For anyone that's confused why Ashley is allowed to swear people in, if you have read the Oath of Office section of our Constitution, Ashley is allowed to swear in any individual into any position in any branch, whereas like Juan and I are only allowed to swear in people for the legislative branch, or Parker can only swear in executive branch members. So, but Ashley is allowed to swear in anybody. So go ahead and take it away.
Okay, I'm gonna have you guys raise your right hands, and then at the end, you're gonna say, "I will." I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of student intern and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the Kansas State University Governing Association.
I will.
Okay, now I'm gonna have you all say your name, major, year, hometown, and favorite scent.
Hello, okay, that was a lot louder than I was thinking. Hello, my name is Jolene Griffiths. I am from Lenexa, Kansas, although I was originally born in the United Kingdom. My major is electrical engineering, and my favorite smell is, so you know if you're going into like, where there's a fancy dinner or something, that unique smell where it's freshly washed cloth and bread, like that smell, that's probably my favorite.
Hello, my name is Ibrahim Chifchi. I'm a biochemistry major, and I'm from town. And my favorite smell is fresh baked apple pie.
All right, I'm Gavin Strunk. I'm from Wamego, Kansas. I'm majoring in finance, and I'd say that new car smell is pretty good.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. If you want to give a big round of applause for our Okay, now we will go ahead and move into committee reports for the night. So are there any committee chairs that would like to give a report tonight? Chair Pondello.
Hey guys, so the mic is off. There we go. Can you guys hear me? I can hear myself. Cool. So, short and simple, I currently have 2 senators that are sitting on my committee. So if you are a senator and want to be a part of DEI, let me know. It is at 7:30 on Mondays. We do some project-based work, but also funding work. It is really fun. More details, hit me up.
I will follow up and say that you are allowed to be on more than one committee. So if you are interested, you don't have to resign your current committee seat as long as it doesn't overlap. Any questions for Joseph? Awesome. Seeing none, Joseph, you may take your seat. And are there any further committee chairs that would like to give a report tonight? Chair Phillips.
All right, hello everyone. So you will see a couple things from the Student Services Fee Committee tonight. First, we just finished up our review of CSI, and so I'll get into that legislation later on tonight. But the main thing that I wanted to let you all know of is we are starting our review of student activity fee and sports club entities on Monday. And so that includes our student allocations committee budget, our diversity programming budget, and a lot of different other areas on campus. And so if you are interested in those budgets and want to be a part of that review process, you're more than welcome to come. That will be on Monday at 5:30 in the Center for Student Involvement conference room right across the way. And if you want to go on Zoom, hit me up and I will get you a link for that. So thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks, Blake. Any questions for Chair Phillips? Seeing none, you may take your seat. Are there any further committee chairs that would like to give a report tonight? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move into directors' reports. So are there any directors that would like to give a report tonight? Okay, awesome. Seeing none, we're going to go ahead and move into college caucus time, and Juan will give a little bit of an explanation about what we're going to be doing with that.
All right, everybody. So earlier this week, I reached out to all the caucus leaders asking for status updates on the goals that were made at the beginning of the term. We did get some emails sent out, get some meetings scheduled. So we're going to convene as caucuses now and figure out a game plan on the next steps that we're going to take so that we can hopefully have some concrete steps kind of checked off the list before the end of the semester starts catching up with us.
Awesome. Let's call it 7:25. I'm going to send a few of you in some caucuses, the Zoom link, so you can get your other members on Zoom. Disperse. No one go into the bowling alley, please. No one go buy beer.
That's all right. I apologize. Hi, y'all. Do you
No, I haven't. And give me like tip how to go about
I'll forward you the one that I sent to Culbertson.
So this one.
If you want to just do that same one, if you want me to.
See, tomorrow we're doing Tuesday, you said, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I can do that as well.
Whenever.
I can do that. If you want to take our keys, I can.
Okay. So.
Talk about it.
I am meeting with
Hey,
her.
October 20th. Okay. I was really confused because like I saw 3 and I was like, oh.
Just chilling by myself.
Okay. Okay.
Shauna?
Culbertson.
She's
But I also don't want their.
No, I'm meeting with the. Oh, yeah, that should be.
How does it work? It is not one of the
All right.
Yeah, so we were starting meeting with 15 merchants. Talking about like future goals.
You set up a meeting?
Meeting with the dean. I'm gonna go get my tracker. We're gonna
We just need to find one more center.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one.
Oh, good. As long as she would show up.
So, I never met him before, so.
Well,
I need to figure out how to get, so we wanted to get in touch with all the leaders throughout the public. So I need to figure out how to.
Are you lucky?
I'll need to.
hey, Drew, I just forwarded you the one for helping.
I'm not so sure. Yeah, so I will leave the list. Then you open it. So, right now these are
That's the other thing we can do. We gotta talk to them, I think I'm gonna try and get some pages.
I can see a bit more sort of just give you a heads up. Elementary. It's really, yeah, I just felt like it was so.
Yeah, I definitely. I feel like we're not gonna pursue the last one.
Yeah, I don't know. It's driven by
Yeah.
which is nice, but it's like a review. So there's one like right here. It's a wheelchair based life.
So it's the Fort Worth.
We looked at structure, there are all these students.
Probably leave like 3 o'clock.
Good kids.
Sometime after work.
Yeah, so.
That's sort of the path to it. We got to really
pretty widely.
look into the details.
Well, that's a little nicer than the way we're gonna be quite right. It'll be nice. No, absolutely.
Yeah, so questions for Tuesday.
Well,
I mean,
somebody leaves.
just ask, like, I think first ask, like.
So I think he's having at least one bill. So that would be.
Art and science.
I think we'll give her a chance.
We were kind of wondering, like, he said, like, would this ever be possible?
That's perfect. Yeah, that'll be.
I don't think it's
talking about. There's a concert.
Might be something that we could work on this year. Yeah, I also think so. Ask about that. Right, but just ask him, like, get his thoughts and stuff, maybe ask him.
We had over the years.
Actually,
a lot of.
I think that kind of comes back. And then.
Oh.
I guess that's good start. Yeah.
Good start. We went back to the area for the World Championship. Back to Arlington. So we had a lot of fun. Yeah, I think it really went out of stock there. There you go.
Doesn't support good. Her job functions really to support students. So she does have support here.
Joe Parker's.
That's sort of what I take it from. Yeah.
Honestly,
It's good talk. It's a good question.
Yeah, that's what I like.
What do you have to worry about that?
You always be the right. Always be a little taller.
What are you, 6'3" or how old are you?
Yeah, about 6'3". Yeah.
Are you 6'3"?
So, yeah, that's like 3 weeks. Yep.
Well, they also just the HSW.
Yeah.
It just looks funny. I've never seen it say like they asked for help.
Yeah. Never seen that. Yeah, so they should like do this every single week.
Okay, that sounds good, yeah.
But yeah, so either Shauna or Chelsea. But you can ask them. I mean, ask about that, like, be like, hey, we're making posters.
So really, we went out and went to.
I mean, it's really like
Well, if you want to get like in specific locations, right? Like some of the places where posters are being hung.
How they serve.
But
My friends was taken from our.
I'm sure there are some opportunity for higher Jolene. And then
The doors are also involved.
I was kept out of myself. I
I'll
promise.
have locations, maybe have some changes to.
I got you.
But I was big about it.
And then
One of the things that's careful.
yep, no, I mean, it is a lot of stuff. We can get nuts.
Nervous. Makes me nervous, right? She just took.
That's so true. So we're like, okay, and then like, no, we're not gonna do it. That's probably better than anything else.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. My mom just tell me she was on play grade.
So, there's not much more you can do.
I would be a fan of
Just she would work out there with you.
And then they're suggesting that we just
Like, the arts and sciences, you know,
What do they say in Jaws?
oh yeah, engineering, especially on the west side.
Sponsor from
Oh, yeah.
Two, we got Ed and.
So there's really things that they want to go. Listening on the
We had 7 at the beginning of this year. Or, no. No, it's like when, like,
Thinking about you on the North and east, so close to for your.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, elephant, giraffe. They can go 5 hours.
Yeah, so getting like right in you would select up to why would you but yeah.
It's nice to get the second word. That's the most common. It's sharp.
So we do.
You start working Mitchell Gallagher. And you go into this meeting. It's closer. It's actually closer down here. It's closer to some of the other gigs. But it's also right now it's a little area free. So it's a little safer to go visit, like not insects.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so in 2006, 2007,
Both like social stuff and also like professional development. Specifically this year, like this whole like thing they've been doing with like the they're doing it all the time.
beginning April. So they got
Yeah, you're right. You're not so much.
Now they get they're bad. It's just this press one, which is better than they're just other than
We can run some this year. Maybe if Jody ran
the sparkling water can be a lot of blackouts.
It's
Townships and
the amount of work that I put into it is definitely not necessary, but like
we all live everybody. So I spent literally like 4 or 5 hours. He was there every day. I know he could. We were literally on. We were in the first like really cool conference center. Well done.
interesting.
Just a phenomenal leader. Just I think so like everything I started there was once again.
I got African American and I respect
I would say
since there's
it's just like me. We're about to
All right, everybody. We are going to go ahead and come back to order. Yeah, thanks everybody. So thanks for bearing with us with that. Hopefully you had a productive caucus time, but we're going to go ahead and move into approval of allocations for the evening. So up for approval tonight, we have Bill 36, which is the fiscal year 2023 student allocation to the Interfraternity Council. They requested 1,000, they were recommended 900. Next up, we have Bill 37, the fiscal year 23 student allocation to Model United Nations. They requested 1,000, they were recommended 1,000. Then we have Bill 38, which is the fiscal year 2023 student allocation to the Society of Manufacturing Engineers. They requested 1,000 and were recommended 1,000. And lastly, we have Bill 39, the fiscal year 2023 student allocation to the Women's Soccer Club. They requested 2,000 and were recommended 2,000. All four bills were referred favorably from the Student Allocations Committee on a vote of 11 to 0 to 0. Is there a motion to approve the allocations? Senator Salmon.
I move to approve the allocations. Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the allocations. Are there any objections? Seeing none, the allocations will stand approved, and we will go ahead and move into final action on Bill 40. If the author will please come forward. Bill 40 was referred favorably from the Tuition Enhancements Committee 8 to 0 to 0.
No changes have been made.
You have first rights to debate.
Yeah, so this was an introduction last week. Just a reminder of what this legislation does. At the moment, there's nothing legislated saying that chairs are allowed to accept late applications, except in the case of sports club, which we passed through last week. This is just allowing that same thing for Tuition Enhancements Committee. But if the chair decides to reject a late application, then the committee has the ability to overrule the chair.
Awesome. Thanks, Kate. Seeing as that was debate in the positive, we are now seeking speeches in the negative. Are there any further speeches in the positive? And are there any further speeches at all? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and Senator Heatherman.
I move to hold bills 40 and 41 for both roll call.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to hold bills 40 and 41 for bulk roll call. Hannah, do you have debate on the motion, or do we need to take a vote on it?
Since
It's not me.
A motion to bulk roll call is ostensibly a motion to suspend the rules, which I think is debatable.
These were referred unanimously out of committee, both of them favorably. They are not contentious and, or I think that can be inferred by the lack of debate. And therefore, I think we can hold both for a vote and save time.
I lied. That was not a debatable motion. So we'll go ahead and take a vote on the motion. All those in favor, please raise your placards. Proxies raised too. All opposed? Cool. Will the author of Bill 41 please come forward?
Yes.
Were any changes made?
No, Boswell needs to be changed to Bothwell still. But.
Got it. Your first rights to debate.
Awesome. So yes, this piece of legislation is something that I introduced last week and was supposed to introduce back in August of 21. So that is my fault for not doing that. This kind of just clarifies in our statutes a university policy that already exists now. So we changed up the way that students are eligible to be charged the student services fee from between the spring of 21 and the fall of 21. And so those changes have already been implemented. And this was one of those changes that ended up happening. I just totally forgot to submit this, which was my fault. And so this is just kind of doing some cleanup work on our end, making sure that our statutes are reflecting university policy. So I would strongly encourage a yes vote on this.
Awesome. Thanks, Blake. Seeing as that was a speech in the positive, we are now seeking speeches in the negative. And are there any further speeches in the positive? And are there any further speeches at all? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move into a roll call vote on bills 40 and 41.
All right, folks. So just a reminder, if we're voting on two bills, you can say yes to both, no to both, pass, abstain on one, or abstain on both, and any combination of the two. Now to get started, Anderson,
Yes and yes.
Bannister,
Yes.
voting on the bills 40 and 41.
Yes and yes.
Barron,
Proxy vote yes and yes.
Bellamy,
Yes to both.
Blood,
Yes, sir.
Broughton,
Double yes.
Brown,
Yes. Yes.
Carey,
Yes and yes by proxy.
Compton,
Yes to both.
Coy,
Yes to both.
Davidson, DePaz,
Yes and yes.
Dole,
Yes to both.
Gromas, Heatherman,
Yes to both.
Hoffman,
Yes squared.
Hubig,
Yes to both.
Johnson,
Yes to both by proxy.
Kalarikiel,
Yes to both by proxy.
Kamen,
Yes to both by proxy.
Kappelman,
Blake, you did the wrong vote.
Oh crap, I'm Kaplan, I'm so sorry.
So go back and ask Jeremy.
Kamen,
Yes to both.
Kappelman,
Yes to both by proxy.
Kirshen, Kidd, Kermer,
Yes to both.
Kenzie,
Yes to both.
Labidi,
Yes to both.
Long,
Yes to both.
McFarland, Middaugh,
Yes to both.
Morello,
Yes to both.
Murphy,
Yes to both.
Moretti,
Yes to both.
Navarro,
Yes to both.
Howry,
Yes, yes.
Pelton,
Yes to both.
Phillips,
Yes to both.
Pilchard,
Yes. Oh, yes to both.
Pondillo,
Yes to both.
Rogers,
Yes and yes.
Saya,
Yes
Carly,
to both.
Saya Nick,
Yes to both by proxy.
Salmon,
Yes to both.
Shear,
Yes to both.
Schreier,
Yes to both.
Spindler,
Yes to both.
Stout,
Yes to both.
Strout,
Yes to both.
Talbert,
Yes to both.
Yes
Thomas,
to both.
Timgen,
Yes to both by proxy.
Volgamore,
Yes to both by proxy.
Wolf. All right. Thanks so much, everyone. Bills 40 and 41 will both pass on a vote of 46 to 0 to 0.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. With that, we'll go ahead and move into introduction of allocations for the evening. So in introduction tonight, we have Bill 42, the fiscal year 2023 allocation to the National Society of Black Engineers. They requested 800 and were recommended 800. Bill 43, the fiscal year 2023 student allocation to the Panhellenic Council. They requested 1,000 and were recommended 900. Bill 44, the fiscal year 2023 student allocation to the Physics Graduate Student Council. They requested 500 and were recommended 500. Are there any questions or corrections for the allocation? Chair Long.
Bill 44 on line 49 currently says unknown in highlighter. That should say the numbers I'm about to send you on a picture. It's NISA 1288 CW. They're relatively new.
Thank you, Jacob. Are there any further questions or corrections for the allocations? Okay, seeing none, we will go ahead and move into introduction of legislation for the night. First up with Bill 45, is there a motion to consider Bill 45? Senator Hoffman.
I move to consider Bill 45. Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded to consider Bill 45. If the author will please come forward.
Can I motion a special order?
You want to special order it? After introduction.
All right, hello guys. So this is Bill 2223-45, amendments to the KSU SGA statutes concerning diversity programming funds. Authors, me, sponsors the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. Turn my brightness. So, whereas the Kansas State University Student Governing Association, KSU SGA, should continue to update their governing docs to better reflect committee structure, whereas diversity programming funds have been historically underutilized, whereas the committee has a duty to fund applicants to the best of their ability, whereas applicants should be judged based on merit, not timeliness, in most circumstances, whereas exceptions should be granted for extenuating circumstances, whereas having the chair, advisor, and KSU SGA accountant's discretion will allow the chair to assess each specific situation when choosing whether to allow or disallow late applications. Be enacted, Chapter 24 of the KSU SGA statutes shall be amended to read as follows. Not going to read all that, but the only thing that we are adding to is line C, which would be 40, which is exceptions may be granted for circumstances beyond the applicant's control or constituting force majeure at the discretion of the chair, advisor, and SGA accountant. And then D, upon appeal, the committee will learn the chair's reasoning behind an applicant's rejection, but not the identity of the applicant.
Awesome. Thanks, Joseph. Are there any questions or corrections for the author? Okay, seeing none, you may take your seat.
This one is special order.
Go ahead. Joseph, you could just stay up there.
Period.
Intern Coordinator Lynn.
I move to consider Bill 45 in final action.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to consider Bill 45 in final action. Bear with me. This is a debatable motion, and it requires a 2/3 majority. Peyton, you made the motion. You have first rights to debate unless you want to defer.
I'll defer to Joseph.
Joseph, do you want to claim the first rights to debate?
I sure would.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the main reason why I think that this is really, really important to like special order this is due to the fact that there's like a cutoff limit. So any requests held, you'll see on line B, or sorry, 38, it says any requests for events held December 1st through February 15th must be submitted by the first Friday in November. I just want to give like leadway to like some organizations, and that's coming up really soon. So I'd like to final action it tonight. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Joseph. Seeing that was debate in the positive on the motion to consider the bill in final action, is there any debate in the negative on the motion?
Point of information.
Chair Long.
Do you have an application that would be affected by this?
So funny that you said that. We actually got one today, but I was talking to Amy, the SGA accountant, and we did not think that it was, well, it's not in the statutes yet, but we automatically rejected it due to it being less than 30 days. So, no.
Point of information, would that application have been accepted if this legislation were passed due to the force majeure language?
It would not have. I think me and Amy came to the conclusion today that it was unfair if we were to accept it within only like 24 days. For example, student allocations is 35 days prior to the event, and this is a simple measure to like help evaluate the individual situation. So no, it would not have been.
Any further questions, folks? Okay, thanks, Joseph. Seeing as that was debate in the positive on the motion, we're now seeking speeches in the negative on the motion. Chair Phillips.
All right, hello everyone. So I wanted to speak in the negative on this. This is the motion to special order, and so what that means, as you all see, is that instead of our 2-week process for legislation like we normally do, we just decide to debate and vote on this in 1 week. The reason why I think that this is not a good idea, this sets in my opinion, not a good precedent that, really just any legislation we can special order and vote on it in the same night. That is not our normal process, and our normal process allows for time to send to a committee, time to really understand and think about the issue. This piece of legislation is no different. In my opinion, this is not a very time-sensitive piece of legislation. Even if this were to be passed next week during its normally scheduled time, there is still about 4 or 5 days for those applications to still be affected by this legislation. And so no matter if it passes this week or next week, there is no time-sensitive issue. The motion to special order is technically a motion to suspend the rules, and I just think that this sets a really bad precedent to be able to special order anything for really any reason. The only reason that we do it, as you may see later tonight, I know there's motions out there, is due to time sensitivity, and I don't think that that is in play at this very moment, which was kind of in the question that I asked. This group would not be affected by this legislation whatsoever due to its force majeure and circumstances beyond the applicant's control requirement. And so those circumstances wouldn't come into effect until probably the day of the application being due. And again, you're going to have that either way, multiple days for organizations to turn in their application. So with that, please vote no.
Thanks, Blake. Seeing as that was debate in the negative, we're now seeking speeches in the positive. Senator Hubenig.
Seeing as I don't know a lot about the legislative process, as I am new and everything, I think there's a precedent set with a lot of the legislation that's gone forward with adding the language that's been happening with other committees. I don't see an issue with this one going forward with special action, if that's the right wording, now. And it gives the committee time to get ready to prepare for the new language and new procedures that are coming up. That way they don't have to deal with this next week when they have upcoming deadlines. This gives them a little bit extra time. And if there's only 2 other senators on this committee plus the chair, that's a lot of extra work. We should consider that workload for them compared to other committees. So if we put this forward now, that I think is just considerate, especially considering that there is precedent. Thank you.
Thanks, Caitlin. Seeing as that was debate in the positive on the motion, we're now seeking speeches in the negative on the motion. Are there any further speeches in the positive? Senator Brown.
I just want to take a second to say, like, a previous speaker had mentioned that a possible reason for voting no should be that it further allows the committee to debate on this idea. It was sponsored by the committee it came from. I mean, every other committee has basically passed similar legislation, allowing them their own discretion when it comes to timing and when it comes to accepting what they deem as, like, good cause for maybe a late application, or maybe like taking things past what the current deadlines are. I think these committee chairs know what they need best, and I think these committees, especially when they sponsor bills like this, know what they're asking for. I don't see any problem with using the rules as they stand and calling a special order and being able to pass this tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Jake. Seeing as that was debate in the positive on the motion, we are now seeking speeches in the negative. Brian, go ahead.
Thank you. I'd just like to address a couple of things. First off, as a previous speaker's mentioned, there's no need to special order this from a time perspective. If you pass this bill this week, you pass this bill next week, there's plenty of time for the entities that are submitting to file and be affected by this legislation, allowing the chair to make different decisions. There's no change to how the committee operates, right? It's either is the request accepted or not accepted. If the request is accepted, then the committee goes through their normal process. If the request is not accepted, the committee doesn't consider the request. And then outside of that, this, as a previous speaker mentioned that this would be following the rules as they stand. That's not correct. This would be suspending the rules, changing the rules as they stand to put a piece of legislation forward that does not need to be put forward and considered tonight. There's no circumstances that require this bill to be considered tonight. And while there are other pieces of legislation in other committees that have been approved with no controversy, those bills have gone through the 2-week legislative process that is outlined in our bylaws and statutes and has followed the legislative process. So since there's no reason for this piece of legislation to be considered tonight, and no difference in the process that this piece of legislation should follow compared to the others, you should vote no on the motion to special order, and then you can vote yes on this piece of legislation next week to change our statutes.
Thanks, Brian. Seeing as that was debate in the negative, we're now seeking speeches in the positive. Chair Pondillo.
Hello again. So the main reason why I would like to get this changed in a timely manner is just due to the fact that we do have that restriction deadline, which is the first Friday in November, which will limit a lot of different organizations to apply. I know that may not seem a lot to you guys, but if it's someone like requesting $5,000 for an event that someone does not have, especially like MSOs, I think that this would be really helpful, and it being in a timely manner is so we can get this information pushed out to them so they can implore more ideas onto what they could fund versus what they couldn't have. I think to special order something isn't against the rules. I mean, that's the reason why it's there. If it were to not be special ordered tonight, I implore whoever is saying no to get rid of special ordering. That's a big request, but previous speakers stated that they do not like the idea, so I implore them to take that decision, and I will help them write it.
Thanks, Joseph. Seeing as that was a speech in the positive, we are now seeking speeches in the negative. Are there any further speeches in the positive? And are there any further speeches at all? Okay, we'll go ahead and take a hand vote on the motion. So just so everyone is aware, if you raise your placard yes, you do want to special order the bill, which means we will vote on it after we debate on it. We'll go straight into debate and then into a vote. If you don't want to special order it, you raise your placard no, which means that it will just have been an introduction and we'll see it in final action next week. So all those in favor of special ordering, please raise their placards now. Proxies raised 2. And all those opposed, same sign. Okay, that motion does fail. So we'll go ahead and move into introduction on, sorry, bear with me, Bill 46, if the author will please, if there's a motion to consider Bill 46. Yes. Is there a motion to consider Bill 46? Chair Phillips.
I move to consider Bill 46.
It's been moved and seconded to consider Bill 46. If the author will please come forward.
All right, Bill 46, or Bill 22-2346, amendments to the KSU SGA statutes regarding the debt reduction and emergency allocation account, author Blake Phillips. Whereas the Kansas State University Student Governing Association should continue to review its governing documents, whereas the debt reduction and emergency allocation account is an unnecessarily long and confusing name, whereas the Student Services Fee General Reserve Account is a clearer name that reflects the operations of the account, whereas requiring that 5% of the total student services fee budget be included in reserves is unsustainable and unnecessary and restricts usage of those funds in times of financial need, whereas student services fee entities should be able to request a budget enhancement in the same year as their review, as any budgetary decisions from reviews would affect the next fiscal year, and whereas making these changes enhances the purpose of this account. Be it enacted that Section 1, Chapter 30, Section 3 or 3002 of the KSU SGA statutes shall be amended to read as follows. And so in that first section, it just renames that reserve account, deletes that second section, renumbers all the following accordingly, renames in that third section, as well as in the fourth section, and then strikes the entity not being able to make that request in the same year, renaming in that fifth section. And then Section 2, this legislation shall take effect upon passage by the Student Senate and signature of the student body president.
Awesome. Thanks, Blake. Are there any questions or corrections for the author? Okay, seeing none, you may take your seat. And with that, is there a motion to consider Bill 47? Senator Pilchard.
A motion to consider Bill 47.
It's been moved and seconded to consider Bill 47. If the author will please come forward.
All right, Bill 222347, decrease of the Center for Student Involvement Student Services Fee Agreement. Author Blake Phillips, sponsors Student Services Fee Committee. Whereas the Student Services Fee Committee reviewed the request for the Center for Student Involvement during the scheduled 3-year review cycle. Whereas CSI provides a variety of valuable resources to Kansas State University students, including support to student organizations, Week of Welcome, and Safe Ride. Whereas the Student Services Fee Committee is committed to ensuring the financial well-being of the student services fee. Whereas in order to ensure the financial well-being of the student services fee, decreases are necessary during this review cycle. Whereas CSI presented on the impacts of a 10%, 20%, and 30% decrease. Whereas the Student Services Fee Committee recognizes the importance of full-time staff for CSI. Whereas based upon information reviewed by the committee, the Student Services Fee Committee concluded that an 18% decrease to CSI's operating budget would minimize staffing impact while balancing the need to reduce budgets. Whereas Safe Ride is an essential service managed by CSI. Whereas the majority of Safe Ride's annual funding comes from a reserve account, which has less than 1 year of funding remaining. Whereas it is necessary to add Safe Ride as a line item on the student services fee to ensure its continued operation. Whereas the Student Services Fee Committee plans to remove Safe Ride from CSI's operating budget and add Safe Ride as a line item on the student activity fee. Whereas the Student Services Fee Committee encourages CSI to continue seeking internal or external sponsorships for Week of Welcome activities. Whereas student organization policy at Kansas State University is currently under review, with changes being implemented by the fall of 2023. Whereas it is necessary to include a clause allowing for the Student Services Fee Committee to review CSI during fiscal year 2024 if the workload of CSI changes substantially. And whereas the Student Services Fee Committee voted 9-0 to recommend the following Student Services Fee Agreement to Student Senate. Be it enacted that Section 1, the Kansas State University Student Governing Association, approves of the following Student Services Fee Budget Agreement. This Student Services Fee Budget Agreement shall be included in and or replace the appropriate chapter of the KSU SGA statutes. And so, like I mentioned, what this does, it is an 18% decrease to their operating budget. The only other changes in there, the insufficient funds clause in that second section is just updated to what we have already changed. The third section used to have Safe Ride as well, so we removed Safe Ride and decreased the Week of Welcome requirement to $5,000 instead. Oh, sorry, that's in a different section. No, it's not. We talked about that. Yeah, so we just changed up some of that Week of Welcome language and added a clause basically allowing the student or allowing Senate to have a vote if Week of Welcome funding is going to change substantially. And so the only other thing was that clause allowing us to review CSI if their workload changes substantially as a result of the new student organization policy changes that are coming. And so Section 2, this bill becomes effective upon execution of this agreement by the Student Services Fee Committee Chair, Speaker of the Student Senate, the Student Body President, the Executive Director of the Center for Student Involvement, the Vice President for Administration and Finance, and the Vice President for Student Life.
Awesome. Thanks, Blake. Are there any questions or corrections for the author? This is definitely a bigger, slightly more complicated review than student legal services. So if you have any question, no matter how small, I encourage you to ask it. Senator Brown.
So is basically the primary provision in this to make sure that Safe Ride continues despite the budget cuts so that they don't cut it as well?
Yeah, so that's definitely an element. The biggest issue with Safe Ride is that that money comes out of a reserve account that has been decreasing year over year as that funding has been used. It takes about $50,000 to run that program each year, and there is, I don't have the exact number on me, but that there's not that much in the reserve account. And so if we were to continue in the same exact way with Safe Ride, we would run out of money next year, and at some point would just have to send out an email saying no more Safe Rides. And so that is our plan for that.
Senator Hubenig.
I believe the credit we get for Safe Ride every month changed this year. And I think it maybe went to like 3 rides for $5, or like $7 for 2 rides last year. So what's the plan for Safe Ride next year?
Yeah, so that is a great question. That will depend a little on a few different factors. Number one, our plan for the Student Services Fee Committee, what we have tentatively voted on is to fund Safe Ride at $50,000 as a part of the student activity fee. that review, like I mentioned, is going to be starting on Monday, and we will have that introduced to Senate either right before winter break or right after, just kind of depending on how long that takes to review. And so that is the funding level. We will then have to identify an entity director because Kelly was going to serve as our entity director. She's the executive director of the Center for Student Involvement. Her last day is tomorrow. And so we are in the process of identifying a new entity director for that. So that will depend a little bit, but we also want to have some student involvement there as well. So to answer your question, it kind of depends. I think our goal would be something similar. Kelly found that 2 rides was more effective, and so I think probably somewhere around that 2 rides for $7 or $8 range is likely where it will fall, assuming that all of that passes with the $50,000. So, but that may be up to changing again in the following years.
Senator Brown.
So a question that when you were answering my previous question, I was just wondering, on Bill 46, where the proposition is to get rid of the 5% student services fee reserves, is that the reserves that you were talking about that this comes from normally?
So that is a different reserve account. CSI has a specific Safe Ride reserve, and when this funding, in the event that we do choose to vote to put Safe Ride on the student activity fee at $50,000, that extra reserve money will go with it. So there will be, in years where we end up spending a little bit more than $50,000, we'll have a little bit of reserve to cover that. But that reserve in Bill 46 is the general reserve account that every entity on the student services fee can access. Not to get too much into the previous bill, but they have not been able to access that in the past because we are at that 5% cap and have not been over that for 4 or 5 years. And so that legislation allows us to utilize some of that money.
Are there any further questions? Okay, seeing none, thanks, Blake. You can take your seat. And with, well, maybe not. With that, is there a motion to consider Bill 48? Senator Brown.
Move to consider Bill 48.
Second.
It's moved and seconded to consider Bill 48. Blake, take it away.
Last bill tonight, I promise. All right. Bill 222348, disapproval of the Joint Committee on Officers' Compensation Salary Recommendation concerning the Attorney General. Authors Blake Phillips, sponsors Brian Blood, Jacob Hoffman, Marcus Kidd, Jacob Long, Peyton Lynn, Andrew Navarro, Nick Saya, and Kate Thomas. Whereas it is the responsibility of the Joint Committee on Officers' Compensation to make a report and recommendation to Student Senate concerning the salaries of student officers of the Kansas State University Student Governing Association. Whereas the Joint Committee has met, studied, and examined the salaries of student officers of the KSUSGA and has issued a recommendation based on their findings. Whereas their report is issued every 3 years and recommends the salaries for the KSUSGA officers for the following 3 years. Whereas the recommendation for the Attorney General contains inconsistent rationales that were not considered for each of the other compensated positions. Whereas the number of legislative duties and unlegislated duties was the main reason for increasing the Attorney General's compensation, but the rationale further states that the powers and duties of the Attorney General are limited in number. Whereas measuring the number of legislative responsibilities is not an adequate way to determine compensation. Whereas the Attorney General's legislative duties had not changed since the creation of the Deputy Attorney General position, and whereas the Joint Committee fails to establish what legislative duties justify an increase in compensation. Be it enacted that Section 1, the Kansas State University Student Governing Association disapproves of the set of salary recommendations of the Joint Committee on Officers' Compensation. Section 2, the KSUSGA enumerates the following reasons for their disapproval. 1, the rationale for increasing the Attorney General's compensation contains inconsistent rationales that were not considered for other compensated positions. 2, the rationale for increasing the Attorney General's compensation contradicts itself. 3, measuring the number of legislative responsibilities is not an adequate way to determine compensation. And 4, the Joint Committee fails to establish what legislative duties justify an increase in compensation. Section 3, the KSUSGA recommends the following actions be taken by the Joint Committee in their review. 1, the Joint Committee revise its rationale and/or compensation for the Attorney General based on consistent and concurrent logic. And 2, the Joint Committee should present what responsibilities justify compensation outside of the number of legislative responsibilities. Section 4, upon passage by the Student Senate and signature of the Student Body President, this recommendation will be sent to the Joint Committee on Officers' Compensation.
Awesome. Thanks, Blake. Are there any questions or corrections for the author? Okay, seeing none, you may take your seat. Before we move on, I just want to let you all know I'm going to be sending out the legislation sponsorship form link again. If you want your name added to any of the pieces of legislation you have seen or will see in introduction tonight, you can feel free to fill out that form with the bill number and your name, and we will get your names added to them before they get certified and sent off to the correct people. Also, please don't submit multiple, just submit one and say all the bills that you want on one form. Makes it easier for us. Thanks, everybody. With that, is there a motion to consider Bill 49? Senator Bannister.
I'm going to summarize all of the disapproval bills first, so we can vote order them.
So they still have to be introduced. So is this a motion to allow the summarization? Okay. Is there a second on that motion? Okay. Any objections? All the bills will be allowed to be summarized. We still need a motion to consider Bill 49, though. Caucus Leader Compton.
I move to consider Bill 49. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to consider Bill 49. If the author will please come forward, and there she is.
I do have a friendly amendment for this bill. In section 3 of the be it enacted part, add a fourth bullet point there that states the Joint Committee should independently explain its reasoning for each position's recommended compensation.
Thank you.
Good.
You are allowed to summarize.
Okay. So Bill 49 is a disapproval based on the process used by JCOC. And I've got this split into a few different kind of sections of this group of people's disapproval of the process itself. So the first one is the issues that we found with the survey that was sent out for the purpose of gathering additional perspectives on all of the officers' work, legislated and non-legislated. That survey was originally supposed to be sent to all of the Student Senate officers. It was not sent to all KSU SGA officers. So, for example, communications director, parliamentarian, intern coordinator, none of them were contacted concerning any of their responsibilities. And then it was also supposed to be sent to recent ex-officers. So anyone who held a position as an officer in the past 2 to 3 years was also supposed to receive that survey. That also did not happen. None of the past attorney generals or deputy attorney generals received the survey. And there were several past committee chairs from the last year that also did not receive the survey. And so that was the first set of issues that we saw there. This second section, starting on about line 33, is just an issue with the rationale for deciding which individuals received the survey was inconsistent, and then they didn't receive adequate information about the duties of individuals who they did not reach out to. The next one was, starting on line 38, is that the questions of the survey were not consistent for all recipients. There was a different survey sent to past officers and for current officers. So just from a data analysis standpoint, there were some issues brought up about having consistent questions on all of the surveys, and that the fact that because the questions were so open-ended, that allowed for really interpretive answers on the part of the people who were receiving the survey. So one of the examples that I heard from people who had received the survey were that if they put a lot of time and effort into the survey, that reflected better when it came to compensation. Whereas if you, as an officer, maybe didn't put as much time into that survey, it reflected more poorly. That was another issue that was brought up by somebody who was in the room when we were making these pieces of legislation. And then starting on line 42, the bill is talking about just inconsistent rationale for changes in different officers' compensation levels. So, for example, some committee chairs did not receive any alterations in their compensation because their positions were, quote, newly created or revised, but other committee chairs did receive changes in their compensation to reflect new revisions to their position. Another part where we saw that was that they said that some positions were receiving compensation levels based only on what their legislative duties were. Other positions were changed compensation based on work that they were doing that was not legislated. So we saw just a lot of contradiction in what we were hearing from the JCOC committee and some of the things that were enumerated in the report. And then lastly, the Joint Committee did not independently explain their reasoning for all position decisions. So, for example, the lack of changes for chief of staff and speaker and any of those positions that didn't receive the survey, they were not enumerated anywhere within the report, and so we would like to also see that happen. So then, being enacted, I'm just going to read this part. That'll be shorter. So starting at section 2, KSU SGA enumerates the following reasons for their disapproval. The survey used by the Joint Committee to help determine compensation was not sent to all relevant parties, and the results did not properly inform their decisions for officer compensation. 2, the survey questions and data analysis were inconsistent and flawed. 3, the Joint Committee did not apply consistent logic to rationalize their compensation recommendations. Section 3 states that the KSU SGA recommends to the following actions be taken by the Joint Committee in their review. The survey used to gather perspectives on non-legislative work should be sent to all KSU SGA officers and all recent ex-officers. 2, the survey questions should be revised to remain consistent for all recipients and allow for more objective analysis of given answers. 3, the Joint Committee should apply consistent rationale to the decisions involving increases or decreases of all officers' compensation. And 4, that the Joint Committee should independently explain its reasoning for each position's recommended compensation. That was the amendment.
Awesome. Thanks, Peyton. Are there any questions or corrections for the author? Oh, Senator Heatherman.
Could you just repeat your friendly amendment one more time?
I will read it.
Okay.
So this is added as a 4th bullet point in section 3. The Joint Committee should independently explain its reasoning for each position's recommended compensation.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Okay, seeing none, thanks, Peyton. You can take your seat. And with that, we will go ahead and entertain a motion to consider Bill 50. Chair Long.
I move to consider Bill 50. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to consider Bill 50. If the author will please come forward.
Alrighty, thanks, Evan. So, for those of you that are not aware, the Strategic Oversight Committee is functionally brand new. We created it last semester, and I'm the first person to be serving as chair. If any of you have ever had a job for the first time, you would know that when you actually step into the position and start performing the tasks, it looks a lot different than what you were told it might be, and you learn a lot of things about the position. That's all that this is. So as I've been serving as chair through Oversight's first year, I've been keeping track of all the little changes, things that I need to perform as chair to make sure the committee runs properly, all the little rules and responsibilities that need to be codified and legislated so that the committee functions appropriately. I just want all of those legislative responsibilities to be included in JCOC's analysis. That's that.
Thanks, Nick. Are there any questions or corrections for the author? Okay, seeing none, you may take your seat. And with that, is there a motion to consider Bill 51? Chair Long.
I move to consider Bill 51. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to consider Bill 51. If the author will please come forward.
Did you get the amendment? Or just like the slight fix that I sent you? The misspelled name.
Oh, yes.
Hoffman has 2 Fs on this. It's only supposed to have 1. We're going to fix it.
Thank you.
Sorry, Jacob. Just to summarize this bill of disapproval, the Joint Committee identified that the Student Services Fee Chair absorbed many of the responsibilities of the Treasurer, and that is why they deserve a 5% increase. We disapprove of this because the responsibilities of the Treasurer were legislated to go to the Speaker Pro Tem, the SAC Chair, and the Tech Chair. None of those actually ended up going to the SSF Chair, and so we disagree with the recommendation based off of those reasons.
Awesome. Thanks, Kate. Are there any questions or corrections for the author? Okay, seeing none, you may take your seat. And with that, is there a motion to consider Bill 52? Senator Pilchard.
Motion to consider Bill 52.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to consider Bill 52. If the author will please come forward.
Do I give my amendment now? I'm changing the name just to be concerning the vice president.
So striking and chief of staff?
Yeah, because as like we further talked about this more and stuff, the vice president's duties have not only been delegated to the chief of staff, but also other positions like tech chair. So yeah, so this is basically just saying that this is in response to last week whenever JCOC came up here and they said that over the years that the vice president's duties have been delegated down to the chief of staff. There was a few different questions that people were asking about, like then why did the chief of staff or whomever else got the delegated duties did not see an increase? So this is just in response to that, basically saying that if somebody did receive a delegated duty from the chief of staff, then, I mean, not the chief of staff, sorry, the vice president, then they should see an increase. I think that makes good sense. I mean, if we're going to be cutting a position, that person's percentage should be going to whomever the reason why we're cutting. So if we're cutting the vice president because their duties are being delegated, then those individuals getting the delegated duties should receive that percentage. So, yeah.
Thanks, Bentley. Are there any questions or corrections for the author? Okay, seeing none, you may take your seat. Seeing as we have exhausted our legislative agenda, for Senator Kamen.
I'd like to move to special order bills 48 through 52.
It's been moved and seconded to special order bills 48 through 52? Or was it 49 through 52?
Disapprovals.
All the disapprovals. Let me get the 48. 48. Perfect. So, seeing as you made the motion, Jeremy, you have first rights to debate.
Thank you. Hey everyone. So, as we can see, there were a lot of bills of disapproval, which is great because we love hearing the feedback from Senate. That's the whole point of this process. Unfortunately, in the process of JCOC, we do have a time limit, and it has been acknowledged by both Senate and JCOC that time was part of an issue. The time constraint put upon us kind of caused some issues. Now, I am wanting to special order this into final action now because this will allow JCOC to not only have a little bit more time to truly go back and look over this, but consider everyone else's bills of disapproval for that one extra week of time, which one extra week can mean that can make or break something. Also, we have meetings already scheduled. We will be meeting next week. It'd be nice to have bills of disapproval to discuss. So regardless, this is a kind of a time-sensitive issue. We only have one other time for the Senate to provide a bill of disapproval to JCOC before time's up. So we want to try giving you all as much time as possible to consider our report and then provide additional feedback if necessary. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeremy. Seeing as that was debate in the positive on the motion to special order, we are now seeking speeches in the negative. Are there any further speeches in the positive? And are there any further speeches at all? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and take a hand vote on the motion to special order. So same way we did it before, 2/3 majority. All those in favor, please raise your placards now. Proxies raised 2. No, same sign. Okay, so that motion does carry. So we'll go ahead and move into debate on Bill 48 since we are special ordering them. Senator Heatherman.
Yes. sorry, 1 second. Trying to get back to the top of my agenda. It happens to the best of us. I move to postpone bills 48, 50, 51, and 52 indefinitely.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to postpone bills 48, 50, 51, and 52 indefinitely. Hannah, your first rights to debate. For anyone that is confused, an indefinite postponement means that the bills would just go away. We would never bring them back. Senator Kamen.
Could you, question of privilege, could you just repeat the bills real quick, just one more time?
All but 49.
Thank you.
Yes. So this is about to be, we're doing it live. So, I can't ask that question, so I'm not going to. Okay, so if anybody's gone back and reviewed the JCOG section of the bylaws, you can see, I'm just gonna start by reading. So it says, on scheduled years, the Joint Committee shall make a report and recommendation to Student Senate concerning the salaries of student officers of the KSU SGA before October 15th. Such recommendation shall become final and effective unless by November 15th, Student Senate shall pass by majority vote a bill disapproving the entire set of salary recommendations and enumerating the reasons therefor. So my rationale is that in terms of precedent, we have had multiple bills of disapproval in the past, 2, which is a lot different than 5. And I think that as we move forward, here in 3 years when they're looking back, having 5 bills to read through as a JCOG starting out, seeing those specific things is just builds a precedent of suddenly being able to object individually every single person's compensation for a set of reasons. And furthermore, I think I asked Peyton to repeat her friendly amendment because I think now with the addition of that friendly amendment, that one bill fully captures what all of the other 4 are trying to achieve. And that's all.
Awesome. Thanks, Hannah. Seeing as that was debate in the positive on the motion to postpone those bills indefinitely, are we now seeking speeches in the negative on the motion? Chair Saya.
Thanks, Evan. So I want to continue keeping all these bills of disapproval for 2 reasons. The first reason is that I think this particular structure makes sure that we're organized on our feedback. We had a lot of questions last week about concerns that this room had with the JCOG report, and I happen to think that that's too much information to put in one long bill with 100 different whereas clauses. I think it's cleaner and easier to read if it's separated into its basic genres. The second reason why I think we should maintain these bills of disapproval is because I think we shouldn't limit ourselves to 1 or 2. I think there should be no unitary group expressing our problems with the JCOG report. I think anyone should be free to express their disapproval for any reasons that they enumerate, right? Like no one should have to compromise on the reasons that they may be upset about the report in some room somewhere. This is the space where we debate whether certain reasons are valid or not, and anyone should have the same right to submit their ideas for our consideration. That's all.
Thanks, Nick. Seeing as that was debate in the negative on the motion, we are now seeking speeches in the positive on the motion. Chair Phillips.
hello everyone. I hate to be Mr. Precedent today, but it's just one of those meetings. So I'm speaking as one of the authors of one of these pieces of legislation who may be postponed indefinitely tonight. So certainly coming into this meeting, I was not thinking about doing this, but since talking to Hannah a little bit more, I think that this is ultimately the best idea. JCOC is specifically a non-Senate process. This is something that is distinctly individual of the three branches, each branch appointing membership so that it can be evaluated independently by a third party. The reason why we aren't so involved in the process is because we will see favor upon Senate positions and other positions getting the most compensation, or just we know the most about Senate, so obviously we would want to increase the Senate positions the most. I think that there's a level of bias that having too much Senate involvement can have. And so that is why specifically I agree with Hannah, or a previous speaker, and that we should pass just one bill of disapproval specifically talking about JCOC's process. And I think that I think that one of the bills of disapproval that was not being postponed indefinitely tonight does a fantastic job of summarizing all of these pieces of legislation into process-based, actionable steps that the committee can take. It is not Student Senate's job to micromanage a non-Senate process. And so that is why I believe that we should postpone all of these pieces of legislation indefinitely. And then along with that, for a little bit more precedent, in the past, these pieces of legislation haven't normally been they have not been special ordered in the past, and they've been referred to the Senate Executive Committee to give even more time for some input. And so I think that that is the best course of action tonight, so that we don't have several pieces of information getting really nitpicky about the exact things that JCOC should do. JCOC is an individual group who should make their rationale independent, or their recommendation independent of Student Senate. And so with that, please vote yes on postponing indefinitely.
Thanks, Blake. Seeing as that was a speech in the the positive, we're now seeking speeches in the negative. Intern Coordinator Lynn.
I think a really big piece of context to consider when we're talking about postponing these indefinitely. Previous speakers mentioned that because it is not our job to micromanage what JCOC is doing, that we should be only talking about their process. However, if you read specifically the whereas clauses and the text of the other bills that this group of people put forward, none of them are suggesting that JCOC should increase something by 5% and decrease something else by 5%. The actual text of every one of those pieces of legislation is specifically calling out issues in the process that we saw with what JCOC did for that specific office. So, like, for example, the bill about the Attorney General is not because anybody said that they think that the Attorney General shouldn't get that amount of money. It was because the Attorney General, the argument used to justify the Attorney General's increase was inconsistent with the arguments used for other officers. So the actual text of each of those pieces of legislation, I don't think micromanages anything that JCOC is doing at all. They just specifically call out different points of contradiction within each of those within each of those offices. A big reason for wanting to split all of these into several pieces of legislation was so that we could have a very clear response from JCOC concerning each of these different offices that we saw inconsistencies with. There were some people who were in the room when we were writing these pieces of legislation that agreed with some of the bills and did not agree with others. And as a previous speaker said, I think it's really important that we're giving student senators and anyone else who wants to sponsor pieces of legislation the freedom to not sign on to this whole package deal if they don't agree with everything that's in the package. So that was a big reason that those all got split off in the first place. And so, yeah, just because of those inconsistencies that are pointed out for each specific office, I don't think that these should be postponed indefinitely.
Thanks, Peyton. Seeing as that was debate in the negative, we're now seeking speeches in the positive. Chair Thomas.
Hey guys, I am the author of one of the bills that is getting postponed indefinitely if this is to pass, and I am in favor of it. I think that in 2019 they passed 2 bills of disapproval instead of 1 so that JCOC would respond more specifically to things. It didn't work. Like Blake mentioned, it's not Senate's job to pass or fail a JCOC recommendation. We're just telling them what they need to work on or what we would like them to reconsider. And I think that Peyton's bill does that fine. So for the sake of efficiency, for the sake of letting JCOC do their job, I think that you should pass the motion to postpone all of the other bills indefinitely.
Awesome. Thanks, Kate. Seeing as that was a motion or debate in the positive, we're now seeking speeches in the negative. Are there any further speeches in the positive? Chair Talbert.
Okay, hey guys, I think Kay and Blake have kind of made this. Oh, I think previous speakers have done a good job explaining this. I think that after the amendment that that a former speaker brought up, that I think that this is that the other bills are just, you know, we don't really need them. Coming from one of the ones that made one of the bills, I think that adding that amendment really does make it to where they have to come back to it. Well, they're suggested to come back to us now and say for each position why they're getting that percentage. And I also think just for the fact of history, that when people in the future come back to this, they don't want to see a million different bills of disapproval. And also, a former speaker said something about how we don't actually require them to. We don't say how much you should or shouldn't, but there is a previous bill from tonight that actually says that the Joint Committee should not increase the compensation of blank position. So there is bills that do specifically say that we should not be doing anything for compensation. So yeah, long story short, vote to get rid of these bills.
Thanks, Bentley. Seeing as that was debate in the positive, we're now seeking speeches in the negative. Senator Solomon.
Okay, I think there have been 2 main arguments that have made during this debate about why you should or should not vote yes or no on this piece of legislation. I think the first is the point that this one piece of legislation we will continue to put through will solve the issues of all the other pieces. We'll be able to get all of the reasoning from the JCOC committee to allow us to make all the decisions we need on the JCOC process. Second is the idea that if we don't allow the other 4 pieces of legislation to continue to go through, we're setting a precedent that in the future, individuals would have to conform to a process outside of Senate to input their feedback and create one big piece of legislation or 2 pieces of legislation that are disapprovals to the JCOC process. I think that even if you agree that this one piece of legislation we will continue to put through, which is Bill 49, solves the issue of us figuring out what we should actually do in this situation, I still think you vote no on this motion, because we are still setting the precedent that in the future we should not be allowed, or at least it's not something that individuals are going to be willing to do, to propose multiple pieces of legislation and bills of disapproval. I think it is very likely that individuals who are less involved in Senate may still have opinions on what JCOC did bad that would not be willing to come to some sort of meeting or would not be able to come to some sort of meeting outside of Senate where individuals convene, they talk about this, and they create one big piece of legislation. We had a meeting, I was not a part of it, but I know a lot of people were, where they did talk about this and create all 5 bills of disapproval. If somebody isn't confident enough to come to that meeting, if they cannot get other people to agree with them on what things should be in the bills of disapproval, or like they simply do not have time to do so, they should not be like excluded from this process simply because they can't access this meeting that is going on that is creating the one bill. So you should still vote no on this, even if you agree that Bill 49 would solve the issues of us not knowing what is going on with the Jaycox reasoning. Thank you.
Thanks, RJ. Seeing as that was debate in the negative, are there any further speeches in the positive? Senator Humanig.
I moved for the previous question.
I'm sorry, the previous question is not in order. Chair Long.
Debate.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the main purpose, for me at least, in sponsoring and helping write these was so that JCOC could get that feedback and know what we disapproved of and have complaints about. They do now. Half of them are in the room, have heard it, they're still here. Half of them have already started emailing and talking about what to address this. There is no need in my brain to officially pass those 4 bills to make it official feedback. They already have it, they're already working on it, they already know what it is. The only important one to officially pass is saying when we disapprove, and that 49 accomplishes that perfectly.
Thanks, Jacob. Seeing as that was debate in the positive, we are now seeking speeches in the negative. Chair Pondillo.
So I'm against this just because if we don't pass all of these won't get to the right hands, and then we'll be in the same situation where we're gonna have to pass more bills of disapproval just because these bills are all written out due to like certain circumstances that we like to see changed. And so I feel as if we were to get rid of all of these, except for one, we would have more disapproval in the weeks to come, and we're on a time crunch. So bada bing, bada boom, I'm done. Someone call previous question.
Thanks, Joseph. Seeing as that was a speech in the negative, we're now seeking speeches in the positive. Senator Kamen.
I move to the previous question. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to call the previous question. So all those in favor of moving immediately into a vote on the motion, please raise your placards now. All opposed, same sign. Awesome. So we'll go ahead and move into a vote on the Senator Kamen.
I move for a roll call vote. Second.
It's been moved and seconded for a roll call vote on the motion to postpone indefinitely the bills that Hannah listed. So if you are in favor of taking a roll call vote, please raise your placard. This requires the assent of 15 members of the body. That is 15. Thank you, everybody. We'll go ahead and take a roll call vote. Take it away, Juan.
All right, Anderson.
Yes.
Bannister.
Yay.
Barron. Bellamy.
Yes.
Blood.
Pass.
Broughton.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Carey.
Pass.
Compton.
No.
Coy.
Yes.
Davidson. DePaz. Dole.
Yes.
Groms. Heatherman.
Yes.
Hoffman.
Yep.
Hubnig.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes by proxy.
Calarikial.
No by proxy.
Kemen.
Abstain.
Kappelman.
Yes. By proxy.
Kirshen. Kidd. Kermer.
Pass.
Kenzie.
Yes.
Labidi.
Yes.
Long.
Yes.
McFarland. Middaugh.
Yes.
Morello.
Yes.
Murphy. Noretti.
Yes.
Navarro.
Nay.
Oury.
Yes.
Pelton.
Yes.
Phillips.
Yes.
Pilchard.
Pass.
Pondillo.
No.
Rogers.
Yes.
Sayat Carly.
Yes.
Sayat Nick.
No.
Salmon.
No.
Shear.
No.
Schreier.
No.
Spindler.
Yes.
Stout.
Yes.
Strout.
Yes.
Talbert.
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
Timken. Volgamore.
Yes.
And Wolf. All right, going back to the passes. Blood.
Yes.
Carrie.
No by proxy.
And Pilchard.
No.
And that motion will pass.
Point of order. I passed.
You passed. You indeed did. Apologies. Kermer.
No.
And there are no more passes. And that motion will pass on a vote of 30 to 11 to 1.
Okay, thanks, folks. So what that means for us tonight is that bills 48, 50, 51, and 52 are no longer going to be considered in final action this evening, and we will go ahead and move straight into debate on Bill 49, final action on Bill 49. If the author will please come forward.
Okay, give me 1 second. So sorry. Okay, so there were 4 main reasons that this piece of legislation was introduced, and a lot of it were my qualms with the process that JCOC used in making the decisions that they did, and so I think the first thing to touch on, I did a lot of this in the introduction, but the first thing to touch on is the survey that was sent out. I'm of the opinion that every person serving in an SGA officer position should have received the survey to describe what they were doing, how they were spending their time, what their position entails, so that JCOC could have an adequate amount of information to decide whether or not those individuals did or did not receive, should or should not receive any sort of compensation or change to their compensation. So the first issue I think here is the survey, who it was sent to, the fact that not all ex-officers got it, no former members of the judicial branch got the survey, speakers from 3 years ago got the survey, but judicial branch members from 1 year ago didn't receive the survey. And so there were a lot of inconsistencies there on who received the survey about the job that they were doing. The second issue that we saw here was the survey itself we were told was not consistent for everyone who received it. That was brought up by somebody who was in the room, said that from like a data analytics point of view, he thought that that survey was not very well put together and that the questions did not serve the committee as well as they could have in being able to create an objective analysis. The third big issue that we saw with this was just an inconsistency across the board in the rationale for increasing or decreasing specific officers' positions. So with the chief of staff and vice president, for example, the committee recommended that the vice president get a decrease in their compensation because things were being allocated to the chief of staff. However, the chief of staff didn't receive an increase in compensation. So it was inconsistencies like that that we saw across the board that I took a lot of issue with because we can't be using one rationale to say this person deserves an increase without using the same rationale to say that another officer deserves the same increase. I don't think that that makes any sense. And then the last part, which was that amendment for Section 3, the fourth point was just that we would like to see JCOC independently explain their reasoning behind every single position rather than just skirting over certain positions and not explaining why they did or did not change those positions or anything like that. And so for all of those reasons, I think that the JCOC process itself was flawed and would like to see an in-depth response to those issues. And so for that reason, I think you should be voting yes on this bill of disapproval tonight.
Thanks, Peyton. Seeing as that was debate in the positive, we're now seeking speeches in the negative. Chair Pondillo?
Point of information, is this final action now?
Yes.
Did we ever vote on a special order? Because we voted on.
Yes.
Yes, we did.
We did. All 5 pieces of legislation were special ordered, then 4 of them were postponed. Indefinitely. So we are now in final action. So seeing as that was debate in the positive from Peyton, we're now seeking speeches in the negative. Are there any further speeches in the positive? And are there any further speeches at all? Okay, seeing none, we'll move into a roll call vote on Bill 49.
All right. That's all. Anderson. Bannister.
Yay.
Barron. Bellamy.
Abstain.
Blood.
Yes.
Broughton.
No.
Brown.
Yes.
Carey.
Yes, by proxy.
Compton.
Yes.
Coy.
Yes.
Davidson. DePaz. Dole.
Yes.
Gromas. Heatherman.
Yes.
Hoffman.
Yep.
Hubnig.
Abstain.
Johnson.
Yes, by proxy.
Kalarikiel.
Yes, by proxy.
Kamen.
Abstain.
Kappelman.
Yes, by proxy.
Kirshen. Kidd. Kermer.
Yes.
Kenzie.
Pass.
Labidi. Long.
Yes.
McFarland. Midal.
Yes.
Morello.
Yes.
Murphy. Noretti.
Yes.
Navarro.
Yes.
Oury.
Yes.
Pelton.
Yes.
Phillips.
Yes.
Pilchard.
Yes.
Pondillo.
Yes.
Rogers.
Yes.
Saya Carly.
Yes.
Saya Nick.
Yes.
Salmon.
Yes.
Shear.
Yes.
Schreier.
Yes.
Spindler.
Yes.
Stout.
Yes.
Strout.
Pass.
Talbert.
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
Timgen. Volgamore.
Yes.
And Wolf. All right, going. Who was? Going back to passes. Anderson.
Yes.
Kenzie.
Yes.
Strout.
Yes.
Did I miss any? Okay. And Bill 49 will pass on a vote of 37 to 1 to 4.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, everybody. I know that was a lot tonight, a lot of interesting parliamentary procedure we got to see play out, so thanks for bearing with us there. But we have exhausted our legislative agenda for the night, which means that we are going to go ahead and move into our second open period. Are there any second open period speakers this evening? Senator Solomon.
K-State is constructing or like gathering feedback for their strategic plan that is going to be like being put together over the course of the next year. I think it's supposed to come out like sometime close to beginning of summer, like this coming summer. President Linton should have sent an email out to every single student at K-State that has a link to a survey that allows you to give feedback on like what you enjoy about K-State, what you think could be improved, like how do you perceive K-State, and like some other kind of like marketing stuff. I found to be really useful. You can also have like individuals who are part of like the external, I guess, committee who is kind of running the feedback process, like come speak to your organizations, I'm pretty sure, to kind of do like listening circles. I'm not sure who you could contact exactly about that, but we had them come to the Sexuality and Gender Alliance, and it was great. You kind of get to air your thoughts about what K-State is. I would really recommend filling out that survey. It took me like 5 minutes and was like really well put together. It was a solid survey, so yeah.
Question.
Yeah.
Did you meet with Robin Stiles or Jon Snow?
Jon Snow and, yeah, Robin. It was them too. Yep.
what is the name of the company, Jeff?
Emergent Methods.
That's it. I can never remember. Emergent Method is the company that's running the strategic planning process for us. They're a consulting firm. Robin and John are members of Emergent Method's staff. They're the ones that are like on campus helping out. They came to Senate Exec. It was a really fruitful conversation. So like RJ said, I have Robin's email if anyone is interested in getting connected with her to have her come speak to your group. But are there any further questions?
Cool.
Awesome. Thanks, RJ. Are there any further second open period speakers tonight? Senator Hubenig.
I love this microphone. So hi, as you know, I'm a graduate student, and we have a lot of graduate students, well, maybe a couple, that are science graduate students, but I also recognize that a lot of you all are undergraduates who don't know the graduate student experience and what we go through, maybe how we get paid and all those kind of fun things, and that might affect your decisions or how you think certain things happen with like fees or I don't know, there's a bunch of things. But I'm hearing some lingering conversations that are going on about what you do and do not know. And so I'd like you to maybe come talk to your graduate student senators, and I might try to put something together for another open period, because I know biology handles how they pay their graduate students different than physics does, and that's just within the College of Arts and Science alone. So I'm considering trying to put something together for the different colleges so that you guys are more well-informed about, you folk are more well-informed about how the graduate students interact with you all as undergraduates. So please don't talk to me now. My brain cells are empty. But please talk to me at another time. I have an email, and I think the email is on Org Central, so contact me that way, please.
Thanks, Caitlin. Are there any questions? Seeing none, you can take your seat.
Cool.
Are there any further second open period speakers tonight? Chair Saya.
So I don't give second open period speeches ever, but 2 weeks ago we had the lady from ADA come and talk to us, and I was like, wow, isn't it so great that we have a bus? And I've been thinking that for a while, but I thought that it was important to actually substantiate what I believe. And I rode it to work the other day. It was great. It is a fantastic service. It's very clean. It comes on time. Nothing but praise for ADA. I would encourage all of you to use it, whether you need it or whether you don't. That's all.
Thanks, Nick. Are there any questions? He's not taking questions. Are there any further second open period speakers this evening? Pro Tempore Pineda Gomez.
Speaking of surveys, I know we've had a long night. I just wanted to give everyone a heads up. On Monday, the Strategic Oversight Committee will be sending out the student body engagement questionnaire. I'm not exactly sure what we're calling it. Nick is still jazzing up a perfect name for it. But in any case, it's going to be a survey asking students how SGA can better serve them. We sent one out at the beginning of the semester. If you remember that, it was through campus groups, and it was super hard to get on it, and then it was just, we're trying it again. Basically, this time around, it's going to be through Google Forms. You don't even have to be signed into your Google account, so you just scan the QR code and boom, it's right there in front of you. So watch out for that on Monday, and when you see that, please make sure to spread the word, send it in your student org group chats and all that good stuff so that we can get some good feedback and hopefully know where the student body wants us to go. Thanks, everyone.
He's not taking questions either. Are there any further second open period speakers this evening? Okay, seeing none, Juan will take it away with Senate shoutouts.
All right. Shout out to everyone that bulk roll called correctly. Shout out to Hannah for knowing the legislation like a rock star. I've got stars in my eyes. Shout out to Evan Porter's glorious beard. Shout out to Jaycock for not being Jayhawks. Jacob Long for looking like a retired basketball coach. Rap track update, Evan. Shout out to Parlaw. Shout out to Hannah for making Senate 100 times shorter. Thank you, Blake, for protecting the processes that make K-State different from other SGAs. Shout out, oh, whoa, what just happened? Shout out to Lettuce for lasting longer than Liz Truss as the UK Prime Minister. Shout out for Senate getting
Okay, the Liz Truss one. For those of you that don't know, Liz Truss is now the former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
On record now.
Ms. Truss resigned today, and there is someone in England that was keeping a head of lettuce to see which would last longer, whether the head of lettuce would wilt and mold away, or Liz Truss would resign first. Liz Truss resigned first. The lettuce is still intact.
Shout out to Nick, busboy and bike boy. Shout out to Nick for riding the Adabus. Shout out to Adabus. Shout out to Nick, jazzing it up. Shout out to the Cardinals for scoring 21 points in the last 2 minutes of the first half, thanks to 2 pick sixes. I love Juan Moi. Love you too. Does anyone want to split a $500? Yeah, no, we're not reading the rest of it. All right, and that will be it for tonight.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. So I will go ahead and refer the legislation for tonight. So bills 42, 43, and 44 will be going to the Student Allocations Committee. Bill 45 will be going to the Diversity Programming no, not the Diversity Programming Committee, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. Bill 46 will be going to the Student Services Fee Committee, and Bill 47 will be going to the Student Services Fee Committee. None of the other bills need to be referred because we've concluded our legislative process on all of them. So with that, we will go ahead and move into our second roll call.
All right, folks, let's make this a fast one. Anderson.
Here.
Bannister.
Present.
Bellamy.
Here.
Blood.
Here.
Broughton.
Speaker,
Yes, ma'am.
reference of legislation, there are student services fee bills, right? The Center for Student Involvement allocation.
Yes. Did I misspeak?
You said we concluded the legislative.
Yeah, I referred those.
You did, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, I just heard you wrong.
All good. Thank you for keeping me on my toes.
All right, Broughton.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
Compton.
Here.
Coy.
Here.
Davidson. DePaz. Dole.
Here.
Romas. Heatherman.
Here.
Hoffman.
Here.
Hubnick.
Here.
Kamen. Kirshen. Kidd. Kermer.
Here.
Kenzie.
Here.
Labidi.
Here.
Long. McFarland. Middaugh.
Here.
Morello.
Oh, here.
Murphy. Naretti.
Here.
Navarro.
Here.
Oury.
Here.
Pelton.
Here.
Phillips.
Here.
Pilchard.
Here.
Pondello.
Here.
Rogers.
Here.
Sayat Carly.
Here.
Solomon.
Here.
Schreier.
Here.
Spindler.
Here.
Stout.
Here.
Strout.
Here.
Talbert.
Here.
Thomas.
Here.
And Wolf. All right, thanks everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. I'll go ahead and entertain a motion to adjourn. Intern Coordinator Lynn.
I move to adjourn the meeting until next week, same time, same place.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn the meeting until the same time at the same place next week. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we will stand approved at 8:56 p.m.
I think he's the well, okay, but no, I was going to put it on my account, and then I wanted to have a
You should put like a thing like tax in there.
You get like a